Today's objective is 6.3. I can solve equations with the rational coefficients. So remember, rational means that you can write them as a fraction. So it's going to be fractions, or decimals that end are going to be our coefficients, or the numbers in front of the variable. So for our first example, let's do 4 equals 0.5 times x. And it's just important to remember, we already know how to solve this. Let's not let the decimal kind of intimidate us, because we already know the opposite of multiplying is dividing, so I'm going to divide both sides by 0.5. Anything divided by itself is 1, so this becomes 1x. And then 4 divided by 0.5, I could divide it by hand or I can use my calculator. 4 divided by 0.5 is 8. So now that I have the x alone, I'm finished with that one, so my answer is x equals 8. And remember, I can check my work by plugging 8 back in for x. So I would do 0.5 times 8. Does that equal 4? And it does, so I know I did that one correctly. Let's do another one with the decimal. Let's do negative 2.8 times p equals 4.2. Okay, so same thing here. When I have a number next to a variable, that means I'm multiplying. So the opposite of multiplying by negative 2.8 is dividing by negative 2.8. And whatever I do on this side, I have to do on the other side. Negative 2.8 divided by negative 2.8 is 1, so I have 1p equals 4.2 divided by negative 2.8 is negative 1.5. And then to check my work, I would plug it back in. So instead of writing I'm going to rewrite the equation, but instead of writing a p, I'm going to put negative 1.5 and see if that gives me 4.2. Negative 2.8 times negative 1.5 is positive 4.2. So I did that one correctly. And then let's do some with fractions. So, let's call this example 3 instead. I don't know why I put an A. So for example 3, let's do 3/4 times x equals 5/7. So normally I do the opposite of multiplication, which is division. So I would divide both sides by 3/4. But I know that when I divide fractions, I either multiply by the reciprocal or keep change flip. So I'm just going to flip and multiply from the very beginning. So instead of dividing by 3/4, I'm going to multiply both sides by 4/3. And then on the left side of my equal sign, things are going to cross cancel. 4 goes in here one time and in here one time. 3 goes in here one time and in here one time. So I have 1 times 1 is 1 on top, 1 times 1 is 1 on the bottom. So I have 1x. I don't need to write the 1. And then over here I have 5 times 4 is 20. 7 times 3 is 21. And I should check and see if I can simplify, but I can't because nothing will go evenly into 20 and 21. I do need to check my work though, so I'll do 3/4. Instead of writing an x, I'm going to write 20 over 21. And we're going to see if that equals 5/7. So I can cross cancel. 4 goes in here one time and in here 5 times. 3 goes in here one time and in here 7 times. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 7 is 7. So it works. Okay, my next one is going to be, for example, 4. Let's do 2/5 times x equals 7/15. So I'm going to draw my line down the equal sign. The opposite of multiplying by 2/5 is dividing by 2/5. And when I divide fractions, I flip and multiply. So I'm going to flip and multiply right away. Whatever I do on that side, I need to do on this side. Then I can see if I can cross reduce or cross cancel. 2 will go evenly into both of these. 2 goes in here one time and in here one time. 5 goes in here one time and in here one time. So I have 1x equals, I can cross reduce here. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 7 times 1 is 7. 3 times 2 is 6. I can't reduce this, but I could say it's equal to 1 and 1/6. Either one of those would work. And then I should check my answer. So I'm going to write my equation again, but instead of writing an x, I'm going to put 7/6. We're going to see if that equals 7/15. So I can cross-reduce this way. 2 divided by 2 is 1, 6 divided by 2 is 3, 1 times 7 is 7, 5 times 3 is 15. Since both sides are equal, we did that one correctly as well. We're just going to do one more. Example 5 will be negative 7/8 x equals 12. And so I'll start by drawing a line down the equal sign. And then I need to get x by itself. The x is being multiplied by negative 7/8, so I need to divide. And when I divide fractions, I flip and multiply. And I'm going to flip and multiply by a negative 8 over 7. That way, when I'm done, I'll have a positive 1x, and I'll just have the x by itself, because a negative times a negative is a positive. 7 divided by 7 is 1, 7 divided by 7 is 1. 8 goes in here one time and in here one time, so I have positive 1x, because a negative times a negative is a positive, equals, I need to turn the 12 into a fraction, so I'll put it over 1. 12 times negative 8 is negative 96. 1 times 7 is 7. I can't reduce that, but I can say that 7 goes into 96 negative 13 times, or 7 goes into negative 96 negative 13 times, with 5 left over. So it would be negative 13 and 5/7. So the important thing to remember is that you guys already know the steps how to solve these, because it's really just multiplication equations. We just need to use our fraction or decimal rules to solve these problems, but let's not let the fractions or decimals intimidate us, because you guys know how to work with those too.